Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're excited to introduce Lucy Bird, who is from the Sustainable Projects, who is the Sustainability Projects and Education Officer from Change Agents UK. And she'll be discussing with us understanding systems thinking and its role in environmental protection. So thank you so much, Lucy. We look forward to learning from you.
Thank you. Shall I get going? There we go. Okay, so thank you for the welcome, Bianca, and thank you so much for having me. I work for an organisation called Change Agents UK, so we're based in the UK, and we do a lot of education projects for young people around sustainability and how to bring it into your life and your work and your careers. So today I'm talking to you about understanding systems thinking and its role in environmental protection. So we're going to start with talking about what is a system. We'll move on to what is systems thinking, and then really importantly, how can we use that for positive action? Because I know that's why most of us are here today. How can we actually have a positive impact on our oceans and on the world that we live in? So what is a system? A system is something with multiple parts that interact, and the end result of that is greater than the sum of its parts. What does that mean? So a great example of a system is the human body. It's us. So your body is made up of lots of different parts. You've got your eyes, nose, mouth, all your organs, your brain, your heart, your lungs, your blood, your bones, your central nervous system, all those different parts that are interacting with each other. So they're sharing nutrients, oxygen, communicating messages via your central nervous system. They're all interacting to keep you alive, basically, enable you to do whatever you want to do. But the sum of those parts is more than just that. You're more than the sum of your parts. You're more than a collection of biological processes. You've got your own unique personality. You've got a whole range of different skills and activities that you're capable of. So you are a system, a unique system. And we have systems at different scales. So we have teeny tiny systems right up to massive global scale systems. And the smaller ones tend to sit within the larger ones. So if we look on the left-hand side there, we've got me and you, we are systems in our own right. And then we sit within our local community. So that might be like the town or the village where you live. That community is a system in itself. So it's made up of all the different people that live there, all the shops, services, schools, doctors, community groups. They're all interacting with each other all the time. And that goes up to give your community its own unique identity. And then your village, your town, your community fits within the wider national community, which is made of all the different people who live in your country, all the businesses and groups that operate in that country. And that they're all interacting all the time, and that's what gives your country its unique national identity. And then we could look at like an ecological example on the right-hand side. So a tree is a system in its own right. It's got lots of different parts that create that living being. And then that tree sits within its local ecosystem. So that might be a forest, say. And that forest is a system in its own right. It's made of all the different trees and plants that inhabit it, plus all the animals, the soils, the waterways, insects. They're all interacting all the time to create this unique living forest system. And that forest sits within the wider global ecosystem. I'm aware I'm making quite a big jump here, but for the purposes of illustrating this point, your forest is one of the habitats that makes up this diverse mosaic of habitats that create the global ecosystem. So all of these systems overlap and interconnect. There aren't any solid boundaries between systems, and that's what can make it quite hard for us to deal with systems and to think in systems, because we quite like things with defined edges and defined boundaries, and systems don't have that. So if we look on the right at the diagram, I've just kind of overlapped the two diagrams from the previous slide. We've got me and you and the tree sitting within our local community, maybe our village or our town. And that town sits within the local biosphere, the local bioregion. and changes in that local ecosystem are going to impact your town or village, and vice versa, because they're overlapping. All the parts of it are interconnected. The people are interacting with the nature around them, and vice versa. And then that local region sits within the social, cultural, or economic system of your country. And that sits within as part of this global human community, all of us around the world, 7.3 billion of us. And all of that is contained within our global ecosystem. And this is just really important. This is why it's so important for us to look after our global ecosystem, because everything we do on this planet is contained within that. So what all of this means, because everything's interconnected, it means that change in one part of a system creates change in many other parts because of these connections. And that's really empowering for us as individuals and as individual actors. So what is systems thinking? Systems thinking means that instead of looking at something on its own, you consider everything that connects with it. So you take an issue or a topic and map out all the other things that relate to that issue, and then explore what the relationships are between those different elements. So how they impact each other, where they synergize, like where they're mutually supporting, and where they conflict or where there's they've got differing priorities. I'm going to take an example of this just to help us understand what I'm talking about. So we're going to take the example of overfishing as our issue. So we know that overfishing is a problem. We're harvesting more fish than are reproducing, marine biodiversity is decreasing, and this is impacting the stability of our oceanic ecosystems. This is a problem. If we didn't do systems thinking, we might just say, okay, this is a problem. You've got to stop overfishing. Now that doesn't work. And we've tried this with climate change as well. We say, well, greenhouse gas emissions are a problem. We need to stop emitting greenhouse gases. It's not as simple as that. It doesn't work like that, because we need to consider all the interconnected factors that come into an issue like climate change or like overfishing. So I've made a simplified systems diagram of overfishing, and this is not an exhaustive list. There'll be loads of other issues that are connected with this, but this is just to sort of illustrate the example. So we've got our issue of overfishing in the middle. And on the top left is maybe the first thing that comes to mind are the impacts on marine life, what I just said. So it's creating an unstable ecosystem in our oceans, and it's having impacts up and down the food chain. Okay, great place to start. But there's so much more than that in this issue. So if we move around to the right, move around clockwise, we've got livelihoods. So fishing is a lot of people's jobs. And if we're thinking about reducing the amount that we're fishing, reducing the fishing industry, then that's going to take away quite a lot of people's jobs and their livelihoods. So that's going to have ramifications for their own well-being, the well-being of their families, and potentially their communities. So if we're thinking about making cutbacks in the fishing industry, we need to think about alternative livelihoods, alternative jobs for all these people for whom fishing is their livelihood. Fishing also links with trade, whether that's domestic trade or international trade, which links with the economy of that country, and potentially is part of them maintaining good, healthy, friendly international relations with other countries. So it's just something else to think about. Laws and policies come into this, and different countries are going to have different laws and different policies around their waters and around fishing, which might conflict if sort of neighbouring countries have different policies around that. Why do we fish? We fish to eat it. So fishing links with our diets and our dietary preferences. So do some cultures or communities like to eat a lot of fish? There's 7.3 billion people in the world. What is a sustainable amount of fish for each of us to be consuming? There's a question. And of course, fishing links with our cultures. So for many coastal communities, fishing is part of their ancestry, it's part of the heritage, it's part of the culture of those places. And so, that's part of the identity of those places. And that's really something to consider when we're talking about fishing and making changes to policies. So I suppose it's worth saying that all of these different elements and issues link with each other as well. And if you were doing systems thinking really in depth on this, then you'd look at how they will impact each other. So I've made a link between livelihoods and the economy, or between culture and diets. But there's lots more links in there. And this is an example of how we do systems thinking and how we think about all the interconnected factors around an issue. So how can we use this for positive action? There are three things I would like to highlight today: map, embody, and explore. So the first one, map. This is like the foundations of systems thinking. So it's kind of similar to the mind map, the spider diagram I just did for overfishing. Do that for any issue or any project you're working on or you want to start up. So when you do that, put the issue or the project at the center, and then identify all around it everything that connects to that project. So you could start with the people, all the different people, community groups, organizations, businesses, government departments that might link in with that project, might be impacted by or might impact it. And then also do the non-human stuff, map out the natural features that are impacted by it, any resources, any other issues. And basically systems thinking is all about relationships. That's why I love it. So look at how all those different elements link. How do they impact each other? And really try to understand the needs of all those different stakeholders, both the human groups, the people's needs that are related to that project, and the non-human needs. What are the needs of nature in that area? Basically, the point of that is that only by meeting everyone's needs is change going to be sustained. Otherwise, you're going to get a lot of pushback against your projects. So you need to understand what everyone's needs are and then try and meet them. And you might need to meet them in creative ways. So the second thing to talk about is about embodying features of a healthy system. So nature provides the best examples for us of healthy, resilient, diverse systems, and we can bring those qualities into our projects to make them really impactful and really resilient. So I've just picked out a few qualities of a healthy system. There's lots more, obviously. First one is create circularity. So nothing in nature is straight. Nature doesn't do straight lines. So if you think of like a tree, in the autumn when the leaves turn brown and they die, they fall off the tree. They're an output from the tree, but they're an input for the soil. They go into the soil to create nourishing compost and release their nutrients into the soil, which the tree then absorbs the next year. So creates this cycle. And we can do that in our work, in our human projects as well. A great example would be like the circular economy. So basically eliminating waste. There's no bin on planet Earth. So we want to kind of eliminate this idea of waste, and any outputs from anything, use it as a resource for something else. So, I mean, I know all across Africa, there's loads of initiatives around tackling plastic waste. So using plastic waste rather than just letting it break down and go into the oceans, using plastic bottles for building, or turning plastic into fence posts or backpacks or carpets or artworks, taking it out of that waste stream and making it circular. Second one is building diversity. Nature is naturally beautifully biodiverse, and that is what makes her resilient. So we can build that into our projects as well. Try to collaborate with people who maybe have different perspectives to you, and definitely who have different skills to you. Build in a lot of different skills into your projects. That will mean that your project's really adaptable and flexible to changing circumstances, and much more resilient in the long run. Connect and collaborate is the third one. Nature is, as I said, everything is connecting all the time. There's this really lovely story from Native American traditions of the three sisters, and they are beans, corn, and squash, so three vegetables. And the story goes that they all grow better together rather than on their own. So the corn comes up first and provides the structure, which the beans then grow up. And the squash, which is kind of like a pumpkin, that provides the ground cover. So that sprawls all across the earth, locks the moisture into the soil and protects the other plants from pests, and they share different nutrients through their roots and through their leaves. So the point of that is that they flourish together in community, and we're the same. So the point of this is just don't try and go it alone. Like if you've had an idea for a project, then connect up with other people or other organizations who share a similar vision, share expertise with each other, share skills, and share the load. Communicate. So nature's communicating with us all the time through feedback and feedback loops. You know, the climate's communicating with us right now around what the impact is of us emitting too many greenhouse gases. So we really need to have real open communication channels in our project. Listen to the needs of nature, listen to other people, really listen to perspectives that aren't your own. To hear their needs, like I mentioned before, we need to try and find ways to meet everyone's needs so that our change is sustainable. Otherwise, like I said, there'll be a lot of pushback against the change that we're trying to implement. And on that note, be creative. Nature's creating and regenerating all the time, always finding new ways to reach the sunlight. And we can do the same. You know, don't be afraid to think outside the box and find creative ways to meet everyone's needs and find creative ways to do things differently than they were before. And my last point is around exploring different places to act in the system. So get some friends together and make another mind map, make another brainstorm of what are all the different places that you can affect positive change for our oceans. And I've just thrown out a couple of examples there. So maybe like practical projects, maybe through education, policy and law, through the arts. Map them all out for yourselves, all the different sort of platforms that could have a positive impact on our oceans. And then think about finding your place. You know, you don't have to do everything. We can't do everything, and that's why we collaborate and we work together. But what are your particular skills? What can you uniquely bring to this movement? What do you enjoy doing? That's a great place to start, is to find your place and the thing that you can do for this movement. And the point I'd like to leave you with today is that systems approaches teach us that values and worldviews lie at the heart of change. So it's from our values and our worldviews, they actually give birth to a whole entire system or paradigm, and they can be changed. So the two questions I'd like to leave you with today are, what values and qualities do you think should underpin our world? What values and qualities do you think should underpin our world? And when you've got an answer to that, how can you further those values through your work? And then we really will be creating change. So thank you very much. That quick overview of systems thinking. If anyone's interested, there's a web link on there. I don't know if you can click on it or copy it, to a paper by Donella Meadows, who is a great systems thinker, all about how to create change in a system. And that's all from me. Thank you very much.
I see we have had a question. Randall was just asking about specifically talking about fishing and sort of responding to your example of perhaps clearly setting the boundaries between commercial and artisanal fishing, and even the latter being watched through good MPA design, LMMAs, OEs. Would it work?
Yeah, really
if that's something that you'd like to.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I'll stop screen sharing as well. There we go. Yeah, really great point. I think, I mean, fishing is not my area of expertise, but I think that's a really great idea, Randall, around setting those boundaries, kind of tackling that issue we brought up around culture and heritage and community identity. So I think that sounds like a really great idea. And I guess I'm not really in a place to comment on whether it would work on a large scale, but it sounds like it would to me. Making that distinction really clear, I think, is really valuable. And that's something that's helpful, like I said, about how, because systems don't often have defined boundaries and parameters, that can make them really hard to work with. So I think actually in putting in these kind of slightly cloudy boundaries. You know, they're not rigid, but they do help us work in different frameworks. And I think that sounds like a great idea to separate those two things, commercial and then artisanal. So I would be really interested to hear if you managed to kind of make any headway with that, or perhaps suggest it to the Youth for MPA committee or any other organisations that you know about, and get that ball rolling, because I think that sounds like a great idea. Any other questions or comments? Feel free to pop in the chat or the Q&A. Oh yes, I can share the link to the papers. I mean, let me get that up.
Yeah, sorry, I was unable to copy it. So if you can share it in the chat, that would be great.
There we are. That should be it. It's quite a wordy paper, but the points in it are great. So if you have the patience for all the words, then I recommend it. You're welcome. No probs.
Thanks, everyone. We do need to just end the session in order to move into the next sessions. I do think this was a fantastic talk, and we thank you, Lucy, for sharing your information with us. And we look forward to connecting with everyone further in the conference. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, everyone.